Hello everyone, and welcome to our channel, where we explore fascinating lore, hidden details, and deep analyses from the world of the Lord of the Rings. If you enjoy this kind of content, make sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss any of our future explorations. Today we begin a documentary-style analysis about the evolution of Gandalf, one of the most iconic figures in Middle-earth. We'll uncover how his role transforms from the Grey Wanderer into the White Guardian, and what this change truly means for the fate of the world. Before we start, a quick note. To avoid any copyright issues, all images shown in this video were generated by AI, so there may be small inconsistencies between what you see and what is being narrated. This is also part of an ongoing test of different AI narration tools, so occasional narration errors may occur. With that said, let's begin our journey into the legend of Gandalf and the hidden meaning behind his transformation. Gandalf's story truly begins long before the events of the Third Age, and understanding his origins helps reveal why his role in Middle-earth is so unique. In the beginning of creation, Eru Ilúvatar brought forth the Ainur, powerful spiritual beings who shaped the world through their music. Among them were the Vala, the great governors of Arda, and the Maor, spirits of lesser rank who assisted in the shaping and guidance of the world. Gandalf, Saruman, Sauron, and even the Balrogs all come from the same order of Maor, which already shows how ancient and formidable these beings truly are. When the world took form and ages passed, darkness began to rise once more. By the end of the Second Age, Sauron manipulated the elves into forging the Rings of Power, triggering new wars for control over Middle-earth. As the threat resurfaced, the Vala decided to send help to the Free Peoples. This led to the formation of the Astari, the order of wizards sent to guide rather than dominate, to advise rather than rule. They were forbidden to reveal their full majesty, and instead arrived as elderly travelers, humble in form but wise in purpose. Gandalf, known to the elves as Mithrandir, was the last to arrive. Unlike Saruman, who sought authority, Gandalf wandered constantly, forming friendships throughout the lands from Gondor to Angmar. His mission was not merely to oppose Sauron directly, but to unify the peoples of Middle-earth, offering counsel in moments of need. His guidance shaped countless events, advising Thorin on the quest for the Lonely Mountain, assisting the hobbits in leaving the Shire, and helping form the Fellowship of the Ring. One of Gandalf's greatest strengths was his humility. While many wise beings ignored the hobbits, he saw value in them long before anyone else did. His years among them, lighting fireworks, sharing stories, watching their simple resilience, allowed him to understand their hidden strength. This intuition would influence the entire fate of the One Ring, proving how essential Gandalf's wandering, watchful nature was to the survival of Middle-earth. As Gandalf's journeys continued, the importance of his wandering nature became even clearer. Unlike the other Astari, he never settled in a single place or gathered followers. Instead, he walked endlessly across Middle-earth, learning its secrets and understanding its people. This is why he became known as the Grey Pilgrim, a figure who appeared wherever he was needed most. His role was not to command armies or sit upon thrones, but to inspire courage, forge alliances, and guide others toward the choices that would shape history. His approach contrasted sharply with that of Saruman, who preferred authority and structure. Gandalf believed that true strength often arose from the small and overlooked. A perfect example of this is found in his early involvement with Thorin and the quest to reclaim the Lonely Mountain. Gandalf recognized the danger of Smaug, not only as a threat to the dwarves, but as a potential ally for Sauron. Removing Smaug was a strategic necessity, and helping Thorin offered the perfect opportunity to eliminate that threat. Yet Gandalf added another unexpected piece to the mission, a hobbit from the Shire. While Thorin doubted at first, Gandalf insisted that Bilbo Baggins had a part to play. He sensed something deeper, believing that events of great importance would unfold only if Bilbo joined the journey. Looking back, this intuition proved essential, as Bilbo's discovery of the One Ring set in motion the entire chain of events leading to the War of the Ring. Gandalf's unique attention to hobbits was not shared by the other wise beings of Middle-earth. He once admitted that he alone truly cared to understand them, their resilience, humility, and surprising inner toughness. His long years among them allowed him to see what others could not. While the great and powerful overlooked the small, Gandalf recognized their potential to change the world. This insight shaped the destiny of Middle-earth. By bringing Bilbo into Thorin's quest, Gandalf unknowingly set the foundation for Frodo's journey and the ultimate defeat of Sauron. His patience, humility, and deep understanding of all peoples, great or small, made him the perfect guardian to guide Middle-earth through its darkest age. A deeper truth behind Gandalf's choices becomes clear when we look at how he viewed the unfolding events of Middle-earth. Many moments that seem like coincidences are actually part of a greater design. Gandalf himself later admits this when recalling Frodo's departure from the Shire. He explains that Bilbo was destined to find the One Ring, not by his own craft, and that Frodo was equally destined to bear it. Gandalf even reflects that he, too, had been meant to guide them both to those crucial turning points. This understanding reinforces how the seemingly small decisions of hobbits were supported by a higher intention. Gandalf's role as a bridge between peoples, both great and small, becomes one of the defining elements of his mission as the Grey Pilgrim. He alone recognized that salvation for Middle-earth would not come solely through power or might, but through unlikely courage rising from unexpected places. His time spent learning from hobbits allowed him to support the destiny that Iluvatar had woven into their lives, something the other wise beings never fully perceived. Yet Gandalf's influence did not stop at guiding hobbits. His work among the Free Peoples shaped alliances that would later prove essential. Still, everything changed after the formation of the Fellowship of the Ring, when Gandalf confronted the Balrog in the depths of Moria. In that desperate battle, Gandalf unleashed all the strength he could muster. The clash between the two Maiar was so intense that it cost Gandalf his physical life. But his story did not end there. His sacrifice and willingness to give everything for the Fellowship would soon become the key to his transformation. After his fall, Gandalf returned to Middle-earth in a new form, changed, purified, and elevated. His death marked the turning point that would lead him from Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White, but the reasons behind this transformation run deeper than just an increase in power. They reach into the very failure of the Astari and the growing threat of the Shadow, setting the stage for a change that would alter the fate of Middle-earth forever. With the fall of Gandalf in Moria, the balance of the Astari collapsed completely. The Order had already been weakened over the centuries. The two blue wizards wandered into distant regions and were never heard from again. Radagast, once a capable Maia, lost his focus and devoted himself almost entirely to animals, withdrawing from the growing threat. Saruman, the head of the Order, fell into corruption through his hunger for power and domination. And now Gandalf, the only one still fully committed to resisting Sauron, had perished in the fight against the Balrog. At this point, the Free Peoples had no wizard left to guide them, and the Shadow grew stronger on every front. Because of this dire situation, something unprecedented occurred. Gandalf was sent back, renewed and strengthened. His sacrifice had been accepted, and he returned with greater wisdom and far greater power. Though his personality and familiar traits remained, he was no longer simply Gandalf the Grey. His authority had been elevated to confront a crisis that threatened the entire world. This transformation happened because Gandalf had passed a test that went beyond strength. In his battle with the Balrog, he recognized that he alone had the power to stand against such a foe. The Balrog, like him, was a Maia, and the danger it posed was beyond any member of the Fellowship. Gandalf chose to face that peril alone, fully aware it might cost him his life. By stepping onto that narrow bridge and ordering the others to flee, he placed absolute trust in the higher purpose guiding the war. He accepted that the fate of Middle-earth did not rest solely in his hands, but in the courage of the Free Peoples and the small chosen ones, especially Frodo. He was willing to let the Fellowship continue, even if it meant his own end. That willingness to surrender his mission for the sake of others proved his purity of purpose. Because of that sacrifice, Gandalf was deemed worthy to return as a greater being, Gandalf the White, ready to face the darkest trials of the War of the Ring. Once Gandalf returned as Gandalf the White, a fundamental question emerged: who had actually restored him? The Astari had originally been sent by the Vala, acting under their cautious plan to guide Middle-earth against the rising Shadow. But after the Order failed, Saruman's corruption, Radagast's distraction, the disappearance of the Blue Wizards, and Gandalf's death, another will intervened. His resurrection came not from the Vala alone, but from a higher authority. Eru Iluvatar himself. Gandalf's mission was lifted above the original design, and with this elevation came a new level of power and responsibility. This shift changed everything about his role. As Gandalf the Grey, he worked through persuasion, humility, and gentle guidance. But as Gandalf the White, he was granted the authority to act more decisively when the crisis demanded it. He was still bound to avoid dominating others' wills, yet in moments where the enemy's sheer force overwhelmed the free peoples, he could intervene as a power of last resort, almost like an angelic protector. One of the clearest examples of this appears during the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. After the forces of Mordor breach the gate of Minas Tirith, terror spreads through the defenders as the Witch King of Angmar, the Lord of the Nazgul, rides through the ruin. Every warrior flees, every warrior except Gandalf. Seated upon Shadowfax, shining like a barrier of light, Gandalf blocks the path of the Witch King. The confrontation is monumental, two powers of vast spiritual weight facing each other at the very threshold of Gondor's fall. Yet the moment ends not with a duel, but with a turning of the tide. The arrival of the Rohirrim forces the Witch King to withdraw, shifting the flow of the entire battle. Later, Eowyn and Merry strike the decisive blows that destroy him. Gandalf does not take this victory for himself. Instead, he holds the line long enough for mortals to fulfill their part, reflecting the core of his new purpose. His influence shapes both offense and defense. He helps Theoden break free from Saruman's shadow, enabling Rohan to ride to war, and he personally shields Minas Tirith when all else fails. Gandalf the White becomes the emergency power that stands when every other light seems ready to fall. As the War of the Ring reached its final and most desperate stage, Gandalf the White continued to embody the role for which he had been elevated, a guardian who intervened only when absolutely necessary, yet always guided events so that the free peoples themselves carried the true weight of victory. His presence shaped both strategy and morale. He was not the one to strike the final blows, but he made those victories possible. One of the clearest expressions of this appears in how he balances power with restraint. Even with his newfound authority, Gandalf remained bound by a higher principle. The destiny of Middle-earth must be fulfilled by its own children, not by divine domination. This is why, after halting the Witch King at Minas Tirith, he allowed the battle to pass into the hands of Eowyn and Merry. His role was to hold the darkness at bay until the free peoples could rise to meet their own fateful moments. And yet, Gandalf's influence was everywhere in the larger struggle. Earlier in the war, he had traveled to Rohan to confront the corruption eating away at Theoden, freeing the king from Saruman's spell and setting the stage for the riders of Rohan to answer Gondor's call. Without that critical intervention, the charge of the Rohirrim on the Pelennor Fields would never have happened. Likewise, Gandalf's guidance ensured the formation of the Fellowship, the protection of Frodo, and the survival of Aragorn, whose destiny was tied to the restoration of hope among men. This dual nature, immense power paired with deliberate restraint, defined Gandalf the White. He stood against the overwhelming might of Mordor when no one else could, yet he continually stepped back so that men, elves, dwarves, and hobbits could fulfill the roles that Iluvatar intended for them. His authority was greater than before, but so was his understanding that Middle-earth's final deliverance depended on its own people. By the time the great battles reached their height, Gandalf had become the quiet architect behind the resistance, ensuring that each nation, each leader, and each brave soul found their place in the tide that would soon determine the fate of the world. At this point in the analysis, we can clearly define what Gandalf the White represents within the final struggle against Sauron. His transformation is not just an increase in raw strength, but a shift in purpose and authority. As the White Wizard, Gandalf stands as the highest power among the free peoples who can act directly when the physical and spiritual might of the enemy becomes overwhelming. Yet, he continues to honor the guiding principle that the children of Iluvatar must shape their own fate. This balance is what makes his role so unique. A key example comes during the defense of Minas Tirith. Gandalf remains the last unbroken barrier between the forces of Mordor and the heart of Gondor. When the Witch King breaks through the gate, it is Gandalf alone who stands firm, embodying the power of hope in the darkest hour. Still, even then, he does not strike the final blow. Instead, destiny moves forward with the arrival of the Rohirrim, shifting the battle to new hands and continuing the pattern in which Gandalf supports without overshadowing. This philosophy extends beyond battle. Gandalf's actions throughout the narrative, freeing Theoden, guiding Aragorn, supporting the hobbits, organizing alliances, highlight his role as a catalyst rather than a conqueror. He lifts others to their full potential, so the ultimate victory comes not from divine intervention, but from the courage and unity of Middle-earth peoples. By the end of this journey, we see the clearest distinction between Gandalf the Grey and Gandalf the White. As the Grey Wanderer, Gandalf was a guide, a counselor, and a vigilant traveler whose mission relied on humility and subtle influence. As the White Wizard, he becomes the emergency power capable of confronting hopeless situations directly, yet still choosing to let others decide the world's fate. In the end, Gandalf's evolution reflects the heart of Tolkien's philosophy. Even the mightiest powers must step back so that men, elves, dwarves, and especially hobbits can rise to fulfill the destinies set before them, shaping a world built not by domination, but by courage, faith, and the strength of the free. In the end, the difference between Gandalf the Grey and Gandalf the White becomes completely clear when we look at the full arc of his mission. As the Grey Wanderer, Gandalf acted as a tireless guide, traveling from Lindon to Lorien, from Gondor to Angmar, always forming alliances and encouraging unity among the free peoples. His strength came from humility, from walking beside elves, dwarves, men, and especially hobbits, earning their trust and seeing value where others saw none. He operated quietly, relying on persuasion, wisdom, and patience to counter the influence of Sauron. But after his sacrifice in Moria and his acceptance beyond death, Gandalf returned as the White Wizard, no longer merely one among the Astari, but the direct instrument of a higher will. As Gandalf the White, he possessed greater authority and power, enough to stand against threats that no other force in Middle-earth could counter. Yet even then, he never abandoned the philosophy that defined him. He still chose to elevate others rather than dominate them, ensuring that men, elves, dwarves, and hobbits would shape their own victories. This transformation is why he becomes a pivotal figure in moments like the defense of Minas Tirith, the liberation of Theoden, and the orchestration of alliances that bring Rohan and Gondor together. While he protects the free peoples during their darkest hours, he also steps aside at the key moments so their own courage can decide the fate of the world, such as when Eowyn and Merry defeat the Witch King, or when Frodo and Sam struggle toward Mount Doom. Ultimately, the greatest distinction between Gandalf the Grey and Gandalf the White lies not in sheer strength, but in purpose. The Grey brought guidance, the White brought resolution. Together, these two phases form a single, complete mission, one that begins with a wanderer seeking allies and ends with a guardian ensuring the triumph of hope over despair.